Hi there, this is Dr. Everybody. So we're up to project 10. Only one more after this. This one is a little long. I do a variation on this every year. Uh, it, we're starting to deal with classes. You had card class in a lab. Uh, the way you want to think about this is, in some sense, there's nothing new here. You've actually been working with classes all along: a list class, a dictionary class, a set class, and a string class, all these things. What's different here is that this is a class that I designed, right, as opposed to one that's built into the Python language. So that's kind of what's different. And then after that, it's just a problem to solve. One thing that confuses students is that this is a card game and they think that they're coming up with a strategy to play the game, and that's not right. What you're doing is you're coming up with a system that allows the user to play a game. So if they try to move one card onto another card that's not allowed, you don't allow it, and you print an error. And so what you're really doing is enforcing the rules of the game and displaying things as they go along. So let's take a look at this project. One of the things is that you definitely need to go and play the game. And this is a variation of the classic game Klondike. But this one's called Thumb and Punch. So you should play it. You got to play it, get a feel for it. Particularly those of you who are maybe solitaire was not part of growing up. Get comfortable with it. Actually get out a deck of cards and play with it, or play with the one that's online. You're going to be doing what's online. That really describes it. So we got a set of rules. There's a couple of things in here that end up being important. You got to, some of you have played card games before, but you haven't worried about what the names are. The stuff in the middle where a lot of the play goes on is called the tableau. Where you pile the cards up is called the foundation. Your deck of cards is called the stock, and then the cards that you take off the stock are called the waste. And those are standard names from from the world of solitaire. And there are some moves that you do. So you can move things from the tableau to the foundation, from the tableau to the within the tableau, and so on. And when you make this project, what you want to do is do the easier ones first. Display the help menu. Well, that's just we gave you the string. That's the help menu. Does your program quit? You can do that. Restart the game. Right? And then, so pretty much things get harder as you go up here. So SW is a nice one to deal with. And in fact, the hardest one, it turns out, is within the tableau. So one of the things that I suggest doing is, write this function so that it moves one card as opposed to n cards. And I would in fact suggest that make it move one card and then wait until you get everything else working correctly to come back and make it so it moves n cards. It's not like it's that much harder, but why spend the time doing that? There's just a bunch of little tricky stuff, places that can sort of trip you up in doing the n. This one doesn't take any arguments. That's the first one I did. This only takes one argument, so there's not that much to check, and so on. So, be sensible about it. Build one, build a function, and then test it. And, get that one working correctly before you move on to the next one. That's the smart way to do this. If you write all the code and then try to test it, you got too many lines to mess around with, one at a time. So the first one that you have to do is you do have to do the setup, and that makes all those pieces that I mentioned: the foundation, the tableau, the stock, and the waste. There is an order of there is an order of dealing that's there's a right way to deal, and we're going to expect that because that makes grading easier for us. So there is an order to do that, and that ends up being important. So you got to start with the setup. The display is pretty. There's a lot of formatting to do there, and my advice to you is leave the formatting part to last. All right, you can display the stuff, but just don't do it formatting. I mean, this is something that you guys can all do. If you start to spend the first few hours working on something that you can do, then you're going to have trouble finding help to do the stuff that is harder. So blow this off until you get the rest of the stuff working. And I'll show you what I mean with that in a moment. Okay? And then there are these Boolean functions that check whether a move is valid or not. These are not rocket science. It's like if this and that and so on. You got to make sure there's things with the same suit and one greater than and so on. So and this one has different suits. So when we're moving within the tableau, then we're worried about different suits. When we're moving up into the foundation, then we're dealing with things with the same suit. And that's pretty clear when you play the game. It turns out that both of these functions are actually quite similar. Once you've got one working, you can get the other working. You can test this pretty easily. I found it handy, though, to put a whole bunch of print statements. Every time I had an if, I had a print, and I printed out all the good stuff with it. And that way, as I started playing the game, I could see how these were working. And then go through the functions in the order that I mentioned earlier. One thing here is that is we actually specify what you're supposed to do with errors, and if you have the you just have an if statement where everything's working fine, then you do whatever that is, and if somebody's tried to do something that's not right, you raise a runtime error, and then your error message is what goes in between these quotes. You made an invalid move, or you tried to empty the stock and the stock was you tried to take a card out of the stock, but the stock was empty. Things like that. The message goes in here. Right? So it turns out that the error messages are really handy, are real easy. You just do this. Right? And then there's one try except block. And by the way, we already gave you that. Okay? So you don't have to worry about it. But so you don't need, there's only one that's needed. It's in the main part of the program. It's already there. So what you do is you keep all over the place in the program. There's an error, you want to send an error message, you just say raise that error, and then it will jump to the try except. It's a beautiful. This ends up being a beautiful example of using error checking, particularly when you raise them, raise the errors. So you see that there is a while statement looking for Q to quit, and then you put all your code in here. This ends up being quite long. Did you give an SW command? Did you give an R as a command? And so on, and maybe some error checking. TT expects 3 arguments. You didn't give me 3 arguments. All right, we raise an error, and we catch them all here. And that quote, that error message, gets passed in here, and then it gets printed out in this print statement. So that's already built in for you. So no matter where you raise that error message, it jumps right to here, prints out that error message, and then goes on from there. The main parts of the program are here. this actually needs to be removed. That was in an earlier version. Doesn't matter. I'll delete that from the file. Forget about that. So you print the rules, and then you set the game up, and then you display it, print the menu, and a prompt before the while loop, and then a prompt at the end of the while loop. So I should be able to type a Q right away and it quits. Right? But all the good stuff goes in here. Right? You're going to replace that pass. We've seen pass before, and that will all go in there. All right, so let's. You're going to start with the setup function. That's this guy, and you'll notice that we specify that the foundation, the tableau, and the waste are lists of lists, and we show them to you there. It turns out that the stock is actually going to be a deck, so start out that way. I actually decided to set that up. It turns out to be handiest to do it that way. So there you go. You create them, and this program, as it stands right now, will actually run. Doesn't do anything. Because all your lists are empty. There's nothing in there. But so what you do in here is you take deal cards off the stock and then put them into the tableau, and that's the main part of what you do here. And there's a specified ordering. You deal this card and then that card and then that card. So you go across row by row. And that's the proper way to deal them in. So you have a for loop, deal cards off, and away you go, using ideas from the lab. Now, one of the things that's nice. So this. Okay, so first of all, this project that as it will actually start up in the way that we give it to you, and of course you can quit right away. And if you look at the tableau at this point, it's just a bunch of empty lists. Okay, no surprise, that's how it was done. So now when I run this program, it prints out a heading, and then it prints out the this nice looking display of the game that we have here. Deals one out onto the out of the stock into the waste, and then we have a menu of things to do. And at this point, I can then give instructions. So, for example, there's an ace in here, and let's move it into one of the foundations. Doesn't matter which one. What it is, it goes to there. So in response to my prompt down here, I can enter one of these commands. Now if I want to move it from here to here, that's going from my tableau to the foundation, so that's the TF command, and I give it my column number here, and I give it my foundation number there, and let's do that. So tableau to foundation, and by the way, it should be able to handle upper and lower case. And if I only specify one argument, up gives me an error. It's expecting two, and that was I raised an exception. So what I want to do is I want to go from 7, say, to 3, and we see now that that I took a card off of here. By the way, pop works nicely. And then I appended it onto that list, but I only display the top of the list there. Right? And since I have a let's see here. I notice that there is an ace in my waist, and so let's move that up to number 2 here. and that is moving from my waist to the foundation, and it's going into number 2. Now, if I tried to put it onto number 3, I'd get an error. That's mismatched cards. I can only put spades on column 3, so let's go to I can put it any place. I'll put it in 2, and we see that that my ace of clubs that was in the waist got added on up there. And so you can keep going along. Now let me show you, rather than showing you all the commands. Oh, let me show you one more. Going from the stock to the waist is one of the easiest ones to do. So you see that here the stock had 23 cards. We don't get to see that, and my waist was empty. And when I did the stock to waist, that took one of the cards out. Now there's only 22, and it moved it over into the waist. Now, what happens is if I quit, right, and now, my tableau was called tab in my main program, I can look at it. It's just a list of lists. So your display is doing nothing more than taking this list of lists that you have here and putting it into this format. Right? And the same thing with the foundation, which is called FND. Again, it's just a list of lists. So to start with, when you write your display game, just print the tab and the foundation and the waist and the stock. Eventually you have to make it look nice, but for right now, just start out with it this way. That's one suggestion. The other thing that you can do is you can call functions from within here. So, for example, I can move something from the, let's see, we can move from the waist to the tableau, this guy. And it's expecting the waist, which is called waist, and it's expecting the tableau, and it's expecting the stock. Right. We are passing it the what did I say? Waist to the tableau is expecting a where's my thing here? Waist to tableau is moving to a particular column. Okay, so this is expecting. Let's see. So I would like to move this. I can move a 9 of clubs onto a 10 of diamonds because the numbers, the value is off by 1 and the suits are different, and that is 0, 1, 2. Oops, 0, 1, 2. So that's tableau number 2. So this is, I'm dealing with tableau 2 and stock. All right. Now, what happened? It didn't look like anything happened, but if I look at the tableau, we can see that the 9 of clubs was moved onto that particular list. Right? Now, and so I can look at that, and I can do other things, like I can say, well, suppose I wanted to test something out in particular. Um, I can look at my waist. It has nothing in it. So let's create a card. All right, and it takes a rank and a suit. Let's put a 3 and a 1. All right, and what did I get? I got a 3 of clubs, and so I can say waist dot append this card I just created. I can look at waist and see, yep, it's got the 3 of clubs in it. And then I can go again. If I'm still testing, now I want to put my waist onto Tableau number 1. Let's see how we did here. And I moved my. You can see that I created this 3 of clubs. I appended it into my waist, and then I then moved it onto list number 1. Yeah. When I specify things, that's actually list number 2. But that's a pretty simple transition to do. But what I wanted to show you here is how I can work on my functions one at a time, test them out. I can create cards to test certain situations. So, for example, I should have an error message if I now created a 2 of clubs here. Let's card 2, cards, card, rank. So let's create a 2 of clubs. Let's put it into my waist. And now when I look at my waist, it has a 2 of clubs. And when I look at my Tableau, now what I'd like to do is check that my error is correct. And I can't put a 2 of clubs onto 3 of clubs because their suits are the same. And it generates a runtime error, invalid move. Now, all right, and so that's fine. And we see that my waist didn't change and my Tableau didn't change, and you can see that this runtime error was printed out and said, oh yeah, that's an invalid move, because that's what my code said. And once I get this thing fancier, I can then say I have a display function which I typed that wrong. Should be display game. Right? And then it displays the whole thing nicely for me. But you could, at this point, just, you could have your display game just print the Tableau, or maybe even print it, for L in tab, print L. You could do something like that, and it gives you a display that's workable. And then as you get time, or at the end, whatever, you can in fact then get it to look right. But it gives you something to start with, so you don't waste all your time doing something that I know that you know how to do. Work on the harder parts of it. So every time you get a command, so like you decide, all right, I am going to deal with implementing, waist stock to waist. So you say, oh, okay, so let me look at, if my command dot lower equals stock to waste, then I do, I call the stock to waste function with the right arguments. Do that one command, and then test. And once you got that all working right, your program can only handle one command. That's fine. Get that working, and then gradually add the commands in, and you can build them one at a time. So hopefully that gives you something to get started with. Good luck.